Mazel tov to everyone. This is, I know the Yachad Kollel has waited a long time to get their own building, their own base medrash, and such a beautiful building. It's in the middle of construction, but I see the base medrash is beautiful, it's large, and halvai that it fills up. You should fill it up with people who are coming to learn and shiurim and lahagdil Torah lahadir. And it's really a covet for me. I hear that this is the first year. Just moved in? Just moved in. There was Hachnosa Sefer Torah on Sunday. And today's Shachris, the first day. That's very, very special. It's really like a Chanukah Savayis with a shir of Torah and halvai. There should be much Torah that's learned in this base medrash, and the Torah should flow out to the community and have a tremendous impact.
That's not been in stores for 3 days of learning.
The what?
That's not been in stores for 3 days of learning for Chanukah Habayit. 3 days consecutively learning. Does that be know anything about that?
I don't know.
No, okay, very good. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
But
it's equivalent to that. The amount of people is.
And halvai, it should fill up, and in Yitz Hashem it will. And tremendous hatzlacha to the Rosh Kollel and to all the enriching in the Kollel, and the impact that they've had on the community over the years has been tremendous, and it should continue.
Here is the word of one man, Rabbi Shem Tov. Rabbi Shem Tov did it. Was the agent Mashiach from Hashem.
Okay, this is, I chose this topic because this is the season of the year in which we are impacted by Avodah Zarah more than any other time during the year. Even today, last week was the holiday of Avodah Zarah. And, but today also is a continuation. And, and we have to know these halachas because we're confronted with them on very, 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 very often. Just as an introduction, we read in Parshas Vayigash that Hashem tells Yaakov, Yosef Yoshis Yodo Aleinecha, that Yosef will place his hand on your eye. And the Netziv explains that ayin refers to the yearning of Yaakov, the desire of Yaakov, that Yosef will fulfill the desire of Yaakov. What was the desire of Yaakov? That when they went down to Mitzrayim, that Klal Yisrael would be an Am Avodah Yishkon, that they would dwell separately. They wouldn't assimilate with the Mitzrayim, but they would dwell separately in Eretz Goshen. And therefore, Yaakov was very, very makpid. Thank you. Yaakov was very makpid that they should live in a separate land in Eretz Goshen. And after Yosef died, we read in last week's parasha about Timolei Haaretz Oison. They spread throughout Mitzrayim and they began to assimilate. Chazal say, "Hey, Pharaoh bris milah." They stopped doing bris milah, and eventually they started worshiping Avodah Zarah in Mitzrayim. That we see that when they came to Yam Suf, the Malachim said, "Why are you doing a miracle to split the Yam for Klal Yisrael? Halolu of the Avodah Zarah, halolu of the Avodah Zarah." And in Mitzrayim, as a result of the assimilation and the mixing with the Mitzrayim, the Jews themselves started worshiping Avodah Zarah. So this has always been the yearning of Yaakov and Klal Yisrael throughout the generations, to be an Am Avodah Yishkon, to dwell apart, to dwell separately, so that the hashpah, the influence of the nations, shouldn't have an influence on us. And one of the basic tenets of Torah is that we should not have any connection, and we should distance ourselves from Avodah Zarah, from idolatry. Avodah Zarah is one of the 3 cardinal sins for which a person is required to be Moser Nefesh, to give up his life, rather than worship Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shrichas Domi. And living in a modern westernized countries in the 21st century, Avodah Zarah may seem to be an abstract concept, something archaic that existed in the ancient world, that existed in medieval times, similar to Greek mythology. The Greeks worshipped Avodah Zarah, the Romans worshipped Avodah Zarah, and one might think that it's not so applicable in a modern society, but that's not correct. It's very, very applicable. There are many, many forms of Avodah Zarah in the world today. There's different religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, and down to Christianity, which is the main religion in America, and the religion that we encounter, that we're confronted with, and we're going to see that Christianity is considered to be Avodah Zarah. And many, many different, a number of different shilas that I want to discuss that we face in terms of Avodah Zarah in America. The first question that I want to discuss is it permissible for a Jew to enter a church? To go into a church, whether to go into the sanctuary of the church, to attend a funeral. Let's say his employer has a funeral, he's not Jewish, and he has a funeral in the church, and he invites all the employees to attend the funeral. Is it permissible? Or another scenario is to go into the social hall. Let's say there's a polling booth for elections in the church, in the social hall of the church, or there's an exercise class, or some other kind of secular class in a church, in the social hall, not in the church itself. Is that permissible, or is that possible? And so too a question about entering a mosque. Is it permissible to enter a mosque? Of course, to go into a mosque today might be pikuach nefesh, right? It might be dangerous, but technically, is it permissible to enter a mosque? So the first question we have to raise is whether Christianity is considered to be Avodah Zarah. It's not, in a certain sense, it's not like the idols of old where they bow down to statues, but is Christianity Avodah Zarah? For a Jew, for certain, it's considered to be Avodah Zarah. Because Christianity believes in a Trinity. There are three parts to God, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Three parts. So they don't believe they're not monotheistic. They don't believe in one God. And for a Jew has to believe in Hashem Echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But what about for B'nai Noach? What about for non-Jews? They're also, part of their Sheva Mitzvahs is not to worship Avodah Zarah, right? That's one of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Is Christianity Avodah Zarah for a non-Jew? Is that considered to be Avodah Zarah for a non-Jew? Christianity is known as Shituf. Shituf because they believe in God, they believe in Hashem, but they also believe that there's more than one God, right? They believe in three parts to God. So that's called Shituf. Is that considered to be Avodah Zarah for a non-Jew? And if it is Avodah Zarah for a non-Jew, so a church then is a house of Avodah Zarah. It's a base Avodah Zarah. And because they're worshiping Avodah Zarah in that church. So this is a major machlokes among the poskim, whether for non-Jews, Christianity is Avodah Zarah. They believe in what's called Shilush, Trinity. And it's a machlokes, in terms of the Achronim, it's a machlokes between the Ramah and the Noida B'Yehuda. The Ramah held it's not Avodah Zarah for non-Jews. The Noida B'Yehuda writes a tshuva in which he says it definitely is Avodah Zarah for non-Jews, and there are many poskim, Pri Megadim, Chasam Sofer, Minchas Aloza, and many others who hold it is Avodah Zarah for non-Jews. And the best proof that they bring is from the Rambam.
My question always bothers me the fact that the word is Mishulash. It's not worse than Shitu. Shitu is Egel also is a type of Shitu. It's very clean job. Mishulash is a very dirty job. I always thought it bothers me.
But that's the machlokes, whether they're
No, I thought that it's even worse than Shitu. It's worse than Shitu. It's making a Kodesh Baruch Hu.
The Achronim, that's another aspect to say that he came down in a body. He came down in a body. So there are some who say, Rav Yaakov Emden says, that's even worse than Shituf. But most
Why
argue.
is it not worse than shituf?
What?
Why is it worse than? Egel also is a shituf. Egel is a shituf.
Egel was a chet. Egel.
No, but I'm just saying.
It was a chet
clean
for
job.
Yisrael.
Here, making a Kodesh Baruch Hu like that, it's just called shituf. That was part of my mind.
That's what they have.
That's
what they call. That's what they call the Shituf.
Oh, that's not understand it. What's
Well,
the... That's the
Okay,
shituf.
let's leave that question. Leave that question. So the Rambam writes, I think this was on the sheets that they found. So the Rambam writes that there's a difference between Yishmaelim, the Muslims, and Notzrim. Notzrim are Christians. As far as Yain Nesech, that is Yishmaeli who touches wine, so then it's asa b'shtir, you can't drink it, but it's muta b'hanor, you can have benefit from it. But a Notzri are ovdei avodah zarah heim, ustam yeino asa b'hanor. And their wine is asa b'hanor. Not only it's asa to drink, but it's also asa b'hanor because of nisuch, because of the cheshash of nisuch that they're using it for avodah zarah. So the Rambam writes that Yishmaelim, the Muslims, they believe in one God, right? So they're not considered to be ovdei avodah zarah, but Notzrim are ovdei avodah zarah. As a result of that, if they are ovdei avodah zarah, so then a church is considered to be a house of avodah zarah. And what's the halacha about going into a house of avodah zarah where they worship avodah zarah? And since this is the opinion of most poskim, that it is avodah zarah for non-Jews, for bnei Noach, so what is the halacha about going into what's called the Beis Tifla, a Knessia, a church of where the Christians worship avodah zarah? So there is a Shach and a Chachmas Adam who say that the house that they worship avodah zarah in is considered to be tashmishe avodah zarah. Tashmishe avodah zarah means something which is used for avodah zarah. And if it's used for avodah zarah, it's also b'hanor. You're not allowed to have any benefit from it. Just like you can't have benefit from avodah zarah, from idolatry, from the idol itself, you also can't have any benefit from tashmishe avodah zarah. The Taz even writes in Yoredeya, what happens if a person is running away, his life is in danger, can he go into a church to save himself? Sanctuary, as a refuge. Is he allowed to enter the church to save himself? And the Taz brings down a machlokes about that, whether he can use the church, the Beis Avodah Zarah, to save his life. Maybe it's Yehorig va'ayavar, because he's getting benefit from avodah zarah. And there is a Gemara, so it is a problem entering the sanctuary of the church. And there's a Gemara in avodah zarah that brings a pasuk, harchek mi'alecha drachecha, keep a distance. And Chazal say this refers to a beis minus. This refers to a house of avodah zarah or a house of apikorsis, that you have to maintain a distance. Certainly not go into it, but even outside, you're supposed to maintain a certain distance from the house of avodah zarah. The Gemara said, daled amis, 4 amis, about 7-8 feet, to stay away from it. So it's pretty clear from the poskim that to enter the sanctuary of a church, let's say during a funeral, they have the funeral service is in the sanctuary of the church. So that would be also not only an Issa D'Rabbanan, would be an Issa D'Oraisa to go in there. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a very interesting tshuva where they asked Rav Moshe about, I think it was the Sistine Chapel in Rome, where people go, they go as to tour. There is a lot of artwork in there, right? And they go there touring to see it's a very, very old church. And they asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, is it mutter to go in as a tourist into the Sistine Chapel?
Do they pray there?
What's that?
Do they pray there or just...
What? I'm not sure if they pray there anymore today. I'm not sure if they do.
It's a museum, right?
What?
It's a museum.
Yeah, but it's technically still a church. I think it's the Sistine. He doesn't say where. He doesn't say exactly what it is. K'netzias notzrim shumakom sha'ovdim. He's talking about a place where they do pray and they have their prayers. And Ramosha Feinstein said it's also, even though you're only going in as a tourist, just to see. And he says it's also for 4 reasons. 4 reasons he gives. One reason is not to go into a house of Avodah Zarah. Secondly, he says they have beautiful artwork there, and that artwork is considered to be Noi Avodah Zarah. It's to beautiful ornaments, decorations for the Avodah Zarah, and you're not supposed to have benefit from Noi Avodah Zarah as well. The third reason he says is that it's Mishamshe Avodah Zarah, right? The house itself where they pray to the Avodah Zarah is considered to be Tashmish Avodah Zarah, and you're not supposed to have benefit from the Shamshe Avodah Zarah. And then Ramosha Feinstein writes, he says, besides the Isur, these particular prohibitions, he says, it's Hashchosa be'emunos v'deus she'erotzen leilach sham. How can the Jew even want to go there? How can he have a desire to go into a church which is so foreign to us, and it's something that we've suffered over the centuries from the church, from the anti-Semitism of the church. The hundreds of thousands of Jews over the centuries have been killed as a result of, because we don't believe in Christianity, and therefore Ramosha says it just should be foreign to a Jew even to think about going into a church, even just for Torah. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef in Yachad Kollel has a tshuva about this, whether is it mutter to go into the sanctuary of the church, and he brings a Shvilei David, another Achronim, that to go into a church is considered to be an Issa Deiraisa Osa Min HaTorah, and therefore there would be no heter, it wouldn't be permitted because you might incur a loss of money if you're not in attending the funeral of the relative of your employee, or mishum eva, if it might cause certain eva means a hatred, that will not permit a Jew going into the church. It's an issa because it's an issa d'oraisa to enter the sanctuary, talking about where they pray, where they have their service, to enter the sanctuary of the church. Rabbi Ovadia brings down a Sefer Hasidim, a story in the Sefer Hasidim, that there was a certain non-Jew who owed a lot of money to a Jew. And every time the Jew would approach him to collect the debt, he would run into the church. So the Jew couldn't go in there, couldn't follow me into the church to collect the money. And this happened over and over again. One day, the Jew decided, I have to go in to collect the debt. So he went into the church, and afterwards he had tremendous regret that he did something wrong. And he went to a Talmud Chacham and he asked him, how do I do tshuva? So Talmud Chacham told him, every year on that day that you entered the church, you should fast. Fast on that day. And that's what he did. Every year afterwards, he fasted on that day. And there's another story he tells about a Jew who went into the chotzer of the Beis Avodah Zarah, the courtyard of the church, and he heard a bas kol. He heard a heavenly voice. The heavenly voice said, "Va'osi hishlachta achrei gevercha, you've thrown me away. You've thrown me away behind your back." And he fasted that day for the rest of his life. So Rabbi Ovadia says very, very clearly, it's an issa d'oraisa to go into the sanctuary of a church, which is a Beis Avodah Zarah, because Christianity, Paskin, is considered to be Avodah Zarah, not just for Jews, but it's Avodah Zarah for non-Jews as well. And they're mitzuveh in the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach not to worship Avodah Zarah. So that's pretty obvious. That's very, very straightforward. The bigger question is, what about going into the social hall of the church? If they have elections, right? And the polling, the booths the election booths are in the social hall of the church, right? Or there's some kind of meeting that you have to go to in the social hall of the church. Is that permitted or not? Because that's not the Beis Avodah Zarah, but it's in the building where the Beis Avodah, where the sanctuary is. What's that?
If the chaser is, you shouldn't go there. Of course, you can. Anywhere in the building.
Exactly. So the poskim bring down the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah, and the Mishnah Avodah Zarah about not just about the chotzer, about the courtyard, but they bring down the Mishnah Avodah Zarah says a city that has Avodah Zarah in it, you're not supposed to go. Gemara asked, are you allowed to go into the city that has Avodah Zarah? And the Gemara answers, it depends. If the road is designated that it leads only to that place of Avodah Zarah, then you're not supposed to go. But if this is a road that leads to other places as well, then you're allowed to go. What's the difference? The difference is, the Rishonim, Rashi, Rabbeinu Yonah, the Rashba, they say that the problem is cheshad, is marisayin. Marisayin, cheshad means you're bringing a suspicion upon yourself. Suspicion that why you're going into the place of the Avodah Zarah, suspicion that maybe you're going to worship the Avodah Zarah. And a person's not allowed to create a cheshad. He's not allowed to do marisayin, right? Things that people will see you doing it, and they'll think that you're doing an Aveira, right? So the fact that you're going into a city where they worship Avodah Zarah, and maybe it's their holiday. Rashi says it's the day of their holiday. So maybe there'll be a cheshad that you're attending, you're participating in the Avodah Zarah. So there's this concept, the concept of cheshad, and therefore you would not be allowed to go into a church, even into the social hall, which is not the sanctuary. That's not the Beis Avodah Zarah where they actually perform their service. But there, you're going in, you're using the entrance of the building to go into the social hall, unless that's only because of cheshad. Unless if everyone knows that there's a polling booth there that's for elections, right? So then there's no cheshad, because people know that you're not going in to worship the Avodah Zarah. You're going in for the purpose of the elections, or it's known that there's a meeting, there's a political meeting in the social hall of the church. So then there's not going to be cheshad. So it really depends when it comes to the social hall of the church or other rooms which are not used for the service. So then it really depends on whether there's going to be a cheshad or not. I heard once that in Lakewood, New Jersey, you all heard of Lakewood, New Jersey? Right? Lakewood, BMG, Beis Medrash Gavoa, right? One of the biggest yeshivas in the world, right? That has thousands upon thousands of frum Jews learning Torah. I once heard that many years ago they had elections in the church, in a church, and in the social hall of the church, and the question was, they asked the poskim in Lakewood, can we go vote? They wanted to vote, and in the election, municipal election, or maybe it was a presidential election, I'm not sure. And they were told that yes, you can go in. Yeah. What? Social hall. It wasn't they don't do it in the sanctuary where they have their service, but they have a social hall, and so they were told that is okay. It happens in Los Angeles also. A number of years ago, they had the elections in a church in certain neighborhoods, and but it was well known. There were signs outside. This is the place for the elections. So then there's not going to be a cheshad.
Inside or not?
What?
Inside the church also?
No, not inside. No. Inside the sanctuary of the church. That's an Issa Deiraisa. You can't go
There
in.
was a polling election in Kabbalah Center, inside the Kabbalah Center. So the question was if you could go or not.
That's a different shayla. I don't think it's a church. There might be problems, but I don't think it's
Because it used to be church.
maybe it used to be, but now it's
used to
no
be
longer.
church.
Now it's no longer.
So with the concept of tashmish of Avodah Zarah or by Avodah Zarah is a concept of Tashmish.
Tashmish, of
Misham,
Avodah
Misham,
Zarah,
Isn't that
Mishamshe, the
Noy
Mishamshe. I think the Gemara talks about it, I would have to check.
And
Why
that's
isn't that
called
Noy?
like this.
What?
Whether with it Mishamish, Tamshish, Vatash, Avodah Zarah.
Yeah, no, but this is not Mishamish, it's not
It's
Tashmish.
the hallway that goes through the hall.
Yeah, but no, that's not called, I don't even think that's called Tashmish to Tashmish.
Why not pictures? Why isn't that in
What?
Tashmish?
What's that?
Pictures and like.
Pictures are Noy Avodah Zarah. If
So it's
it's
not
to
considered
decorate,
Tashmish, so-
it's not Tashmish, no. It's Noy Avodah Zarah.
So in
If
the
it's
case
to
of-
decorate, right, that's another problem. If they have in the church, if they have certain paintings, right, they have certain paintings inside the church. So to look at the paintings, that's Noy Avodah Zarah, right? It's to enhance, to beautify the Avodah Zarah. And then there's also a halacha that we'll discuss about not focusing, not looking, not reading about Avodah Zarah, and not looking at pictures of Avodah Zarah. Very often they have the scenes on December 25th. They have the scenes of the birth of Yoshka. We'll talk about that. And so focusing on that could be a problem according to the Rambam.
What about the chairs? The chairs and benchers, beautiful benchers.
That's not.
Some beautiful benchers are not loyal.
I don't think that's Noy. I don't think that's Noy.
With the
That's
chairs,
for the
they put
people to
chairs
sit.
outside, we could use a bencher, we could buy from them.
Yeah, you can buy from them. Yeah. I think the Mishnah Berurah says you can buy them.
Rabbi, there are different sects in Christianity.
Yeah.
So some of them don't believe in Trinity. Does that make them mutar, or is it something that we just totally believe about? They have the Persian, Armenians, I don't know what they believe, but
Yes, I don't know enough about the various sects, but
we know that they don't believe in Trinity.
we know that they don't believe in Trinity. Unitarian, there's something called Unitarian. They're Unitarian.
Protestant.
But what?
Protestant.
But I don't know enough.
Well,
What do they believe about Yoshka? What do they believe about? I don't know enough.
So if they give him, if they say he's a
He's a
prophet
god.
and he's not a
No,
god.
they don't say that though. I don't think
All of
anyone,
them say
I don't
he's a
think
god.
anyone says that.
Yeah, nobody says.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I
just
don't think so.
second question. The Makom Avodah Zarah, is it the Olam is Asur, or once they leave it or they change it, does it become mutar?
If it's changed, there can be a bittul of Avodah Zarah. If they renovate it, they change it, there can be mevatel the Avodah Zarah. But as long as it's not changed, there's a school in Los Angeles, a yeshiva in Los Angeles, that they bought a church, right? They bought a church. There was a sanctuary there, right? There was a sanctuary there, but they changed it. They renovated
You need
it.
a Christian to do it,
What?
or a Jew can do it? Can
The
a
fact that
Christian
they
has to
said
come
it-
do it?
No,
Right, that is
the Jew. If the Jew is doing, or he's.
How could
The
it
fact
do
that
that
the
till
voice
Avodah
says it.
Zarah go in?
Go in Mevatel.
A goy can be mevatel Avodah Zarah, but if
That they said it, Mevatel.
Well,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
selling
that's
it.
that's bittul of Avodah Zarah. That's to be mevatel Avodah Zarah. But if but selling it itself, I don't think is considered to be a bittul. It's a shayla in the Gemara. I don't think we paskin that it's bittul. We're getting a little bit off the topic I wanted to speak about. What about entering a mosque?
Wait,
Going
wait,
in-
maybe, what about like the high gardens or something like that? We talked about like the court, let's say
You have to be a baki in all religions. But I don't know about it. I have to look into it.
okay, let's just say Stam Gardens.
Stam gardens.
So people know that you're going because of the night and the beauty, that's
So
also
then maybe
the
there's
night,
no chishah. Maybe there's no chishah.
but enjoying the night of it, like.
But that's only if it's a noi for the avodah zarah, meaning that it's probably inside the sanctuary
has
where
to
they
be
do the
inside.
avodah. I think so. What about going into a mosque? So most poskim say it's not a base avodah zarah because Islam is not avodah zarah. Islam, they believe in one God, right? They're monotheistic. So it's not a base avodah zarah, and therefore they're not ovdei avodah zarah. So we wouldn't have this din of osur b'hanor to go into a mosque. Person, of course, as I said before, it could be very dangerous for a Jew to enter a mosque, but as far as entering a base avodah zarah, it's not considered to be avodah zarah.
Regarding to that, could you go after, because we know the Muslims,
Yeah.
for some segment of Muslims, they believe one of the things is divine.
Is to what?
It's really one of the persons there is divine.
Is divine.
Yes.
So
That's
this
such a
answers a
statement we
question.
have.
Very good.
Poskim don't talk about these things.
They do. There is a Tzitz Eliezer, the tshuva from the Tzitz Eliezer, who says that based on the Ran in Sanhedrin, that one is not allowed to go into a mosque because he says that the Ran says that when they're bowing down, who are they bowing down to? Muhammad.
Ali, not what? Not Muhammad.
Not Muhammad.
Some of them not the Muhammad, but some of them they hold Ali is the divine.
Well,
Some of
Don't
But
that
he
they
says,
use
the Ran says that they're bowing down to a person. They're bowing down to a person, and I assume he's referring to Muhammad. Maybe there is a sect like that he was talking about, because everyone wonders about this Ran, because we assume that they're bowing down to Allah, to God, right? But the Ran says they're bowing down to a person, and therefore he says that is Avodah Zarah. So the Tzitz Eliezer says he holds that you're not supposed to go into a mosque because it is a Beis Avodah Zarah. All the other poskim disagree with him. They all disagree. Rabbi Yashi said it's not a problem of a Beis Avodah Zarah because we assume, like the Rambam says, that the Muslims are not Ovdei Avodah Zarah. They're not worshipping Avodah Zarah. But there is a Tzitz Eliezer who says that it is a problem. So that's as far as going into a church. Sanctuary is an Issa D'Oraisa. Social hall is a cheshad. That's right. We're concerned that you'll bring suspicion on yourself. But if it's known why you're going into the sanctuary for an election or for some other kind of meeting, so then that should be okay because there is no cheshad.
Even though that is on Sunday, if the meeting is on Sunday morning,
Sunday morning when they're having their service, right? There could be a cheshad.
most meetings are Sunday.
I don't know. So I assume that they're in meetings at night, or on the days of elections. They're not having their service. It's not a Sunday, but that would be based on cheshad. Another halacha about Avodah Zarah: one is not allowed to be mistakel, to look at an idol, to look at an Avodah Zarah and focus on it, because it's also b'hano. It's also b'hano, and looking at it, focusing on it, that is considered to be a hano. And so statues of Avodah Zarah, one is not supposed to look at those, focus on those statues. What about a person is walking in the street and he happens to see a statue of Avodah Zarah, or he happens to hear music of Avodah Zarah, music coming out of the church? You're not supposed to listen to music of Avodah Zarah either, because that's getting benefit, that's getting hanoah from the music. Or let's say there's incense that they're burning for the Avodah Zarah, and he happens to walk by and he smells the incense. So if he has no kavana, he's not intent on getting hanoah. It's a dover she'eino miskaven. He's just walking by and he happens to hear, or he happens to smell, or he happens to see, but he's not focused on it. So that's going to be mutter. He hasn't done anything wrong. But to be mistakel, but to focus and concentrate on the Avodah Zarah is going to be also. There's a very interesting Rambam, and I get this question from students, right? Are they allowed to read books books of Avodah Zarah, for instance, to read the New Testament, right? Would they be allowed to read that? So the Rambam writes that the books of the Avodah Zarah, right, how to worship it, and all of the laws of the Avodah Zarah. The Rambam writes, "Sivonu HaKadosh Baruch Hu shelo likros v'osam svarim klal." We're not allowed to read those books. We're lo naharebo. We're not allowed to think about it, to focus on it, and that's based on the pasuk Al tifnu el ha'lili. Don't focus on Avodah Zarah. Right? Jew has to, his mindset should not be focused at all on Avodah Zarah. And the question is, you probably want to ask this question, the Rambam himself, right? The Rambam himself writes in Mori Nevuchim all about Avodah Zarah. He knew about all the different kinds of Avodah Zarah, and he had read many books about Avodah Zarah, and the answer is the Rambam had to know. He had to know this in order to answer, to give answers to the questions that people would ask him. People who deny Torah and mitzvahs, right? So Damasha Toshiv La Pikoris had to know how to answer. And Rav Moshe Feinstein adds on to that. He says that's only for a person like the Rambam, a person who has such knowledge of Torah. He's a gadol, and he feels he has to read these things in order to be able to give answers to questions that people ask. Not for a stam person, not for a regular person. They should maintain a very big distance from reading these things. So therefore, according to the Rambam, a Jew should not be reading the New Testament. He should not be focused. If he goes to a museum, an art museum, in the art museum there are many pictures of Yoshka, right? Of Yoshka, of the birth of Yoshka, with his mother Mary, and a person should not be focusing on that, the scenes of the birth, because even though we think it doesn't have an impact on us, it does. It has some kind of an impact on our neshama, just like listening to non-Jewish music, right, can have an impact on our neshama. So looking at these pictures, reading these things has an impact. Rabbi David.
When I was in Vienna, they would ring the bell of the church. The kids would cover their ears. They would say,
Really?
Tima.
Right? And they would say what? Tuma. Because it has an impact. The Gemara talks about, I want to talk about this shortly, about the music, church music. But the Gemara talks about, in Chagiga, about Acher, Rav Elisha ben Avuya, who became an apikoros. How did he become an apikoros? Someone who denied Torah, he became an atheist. He didn't believe in Hashem. How did that happen? Because he listened to Greek music. The Greek music had an impact on his neshama. Yes.
Would classical music fall?
Classical music is fine. We're talking about church music. Church music, the religious music. Let me talk a little bit about mentioning the name of Yoshka, of Yeshua.
What about the picture? If there's a picture of the Zorah, you can look at the picture and
You really shouldn't look at it. Shouldn't focus on it. If you happen to see it, that's okay. But you have no kavanah. But to focus on it, to look at, to stare at it, to observe it, right? And
You're on Pico, right?
Is this to the right?
What?
Is this to the right?
The Rambam says, "Al tifnu el ha'alivim." Yeah, it's a pasuk in the Torah.
No, pay attention or Hana, which one?
What? Well, Hana is one thing, and then to focusing on it, even if you're not having Hana from it, but that's another issue.
What? It's the type of Hana that Torah made. That's the Rabbana.
That's a minat Torah. Al tifnu el ha'alivim. Don't focus on it.
The areas of Hana is like that, to be in from looking at it.
It's even not because of the Hana. It's because of just the focus, concentrating on the Avodah Zarah can have an impact on a person's neshama. It can somehow influence the person's neshama.
There's a church right at the corner on Pico and the corner of one of the streets. And a lot of apartment buildings and everything. People go to shul.
Right.
They want to go home, they walk up. They pass by the right, at the corner is a big statue of this Yachad.
The mother.
So I mean,
they really shouldn't focus on it. I mean, if you happen to see it, it's okay. But to look at it, and especially to admire it, right? And but to concentrate on it, One should not do that.
So is the statue is considered a picture of the allowed, because that itself is not Avodah.
No, that itself is not the avodah. It's not a statue they're worshiping. It's just a statue that represents their religion. But still to focus on it, because when you're focusing on it, right? So you're thinking about it and concentrating on it. So the Rambam writes. There's not a very well-known Rambam, but the Rambam writes that one is not allowed to read. One is not allowed to read Sifrei Avodah Zarah, or to focus on images of the Avodah Zarah.
Gospel songs they can sing in the street corners.
Oh, okay. We'll get to the music. I want to do two more topics. I want to talk about mentioning his name, right? The name of Yeshu, Yoshka. Were we allowed to mention his name, or is that also, right? Naturally, we usually don't say his name, right? We say Yeshu, we say Yoshka, and also about music of Avodah Zarah, and maybe one more short topic. Is it permissible to say the name of Yoshka, to say his name? And what about the holiday, right? The holiday that we just passed. Right? What we'll call Xmas, right? I'm going to use the name for teaching purposes, right? Christmas. Is one allowed to say that if it's not for teaching purposes, teaching Torah?
This is the name of him.
Yeah, this is his name.
The name of the
His
day
name.
of the holiday.
I want to say it one time.
Okay.
One time for teaching purposes, which is mutter. Jesus Christ, right? Is it mutter to say his name?
Both words are just
What? Oh, so that's what we have to talk about. So the halacha is, the Torah says that you're not allowed to mention the name of an avodah zarah. There's a pasuk in the Torah, Shem Elohim Acherim Lo Saskiru. The names of other gods you should not mention. V'lo yishoma al picha. It should not be heard on your lips. In fact, the Rambam writes that you're not even allowed to tell your friend, let's meet by this avodah zarah, by this statue, by this idol. Let's meet over there, and you give the name of the avodah zarah. The only time the Rambam says you're allowed to say names of avodah zarah is if it's mentioned in the pasuk in the Torah, because the Torah does mention certain types of avodah zarah, right? Pa'or, Kemosh, Baal. So if it's mentioned in the Torah, then you're allowed to say the name of avodah zarah. Otherwise not. Not only that a Jew is not allowed to mention the name of avodah zarah. He's not allowed to cause others to mention the name of avodah zarah. Even non-Jews, you can't cause them to mention the name of avodah zarah. That's why there was a halacha in the time of Chazal, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, that you're not allowed to have a partnership with a non-Jew who worships avodah zarah. Why? Because if they'll have a dispute, right? A monetary dispute, what's he going to do? He's going to swear by his avodah zarah, by his idol, by his god. So you're causing him to mention the name of the avodah zarah. Right? Today that halacha no longer applies for various reasons. But in the time when the goyim were religious and they really were believed and were into their avodah zarah, so there was a halacha that you weren't supposed to have a shutfis, a partnership with the goyim, because a Jew is not allowed to mention the name of avodah zarah or to cause others to mention the name of avodah zarah. What are the guidelines? So what?
The name of the cities, Santa Monica.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Simcha Monica or Santa Monica. Yeah, so we'll get to that. The what names are also? So there's a very important Vilna Goyin who brings a Yurei. He says only a name which indicates divinity. It indicates a certain divinity, chashivus of the avodah zarah, but a personal name is not going to be awesome. Because the Torah says, Shem Elohim Acherim, a name that indicates greatness, that indicates divinity, that is divine, that name is also to say. But a name that's a personal name, like a first name, that's okay. And
Divine
therefore,
means what? Divine means Elokus.
divine mean elokus, that he's godly, right? He has certain powers, the anointed, or that he's the anointed. So the first name of Yoshka, we say Yoshka. But technically, you could say the English name, because that's a personal name. I know baseball players, when I was younger, I knew a little bit about baseball. Right? There were baseball players who have that name. It's a first name, just like John is a first name, right? Mary is a first name. That it's a personal name. It doesn't indicate Elokus, doesn't indicate divinity. The second name is the problem. The second name is the problem because that means the anointed one. That means that he is special. He was anointed by God, right? And that he is, and that name, it indicates a certain greatness, a certain chashivus.
That name or a title?
What's the first name? What's the second name for the?
What? Well, the second name is the CHR, the CHR name, right?
You say Christ means the one that is the priest,
What?
that's called Christ.
But that's
It means the one that was Mashiach.
He's Mashiach, the anointed one.
CHR, there are two names. CHR and what?
Two names. First name is Yoshka, right? Yeshu. That's a personal name, right? Jesus. That's not also to say. That's not us. But the second name, right? The CHR name, that's us. Let me.
Why is that?
What? CHRIST. Right? That name is also to
Is
say.
that a title? That's the name.
It's what they gave him as a sign of his special, of his elokus, his being anointed.
What does that word mean? What does that
It
mean?
means anointed one, the anointed one.
Mashiach.
Mashiach.
Yes, what does it stand for? Is it just a Goyish name?
That's just a Goyish name.
Does it
Like
stand
John
for-
is a Goyish name. Paul is a Goyish name. It's the same. That's the same.
That's what it means, not to say. That's what it means, not to say. It's not a law.
So the poskim say, Chavis Yoel and others, they say there is no isur. It's not prohibited to say the first name, right? To say that name Jesus. That's not awesome. To say the name of his mother, Mary, is also not awesome. That even though people think that it's prohibited to say that, but these are just names, personal names of a person, of a human being.
Maybe how else would they call their maids?
What?
How else would they call their maids?
How else?
How else would they call their maids?
Their maids?
The maids.
Oh yeah.
All of them are married.
Oh, okay. So, but it's mutter for us to use that name. It's mutter for us even to call him by the Jesus name. However, the Minog Yisrael, it's become a custom not to call him by that name, but to somehow change, and that's why many Jews say Yoshka, or Yeshu. Yoshka is like taking the word Yeshu. Yeshu was his name in Hebrew, right? That Yeshu is, and just changing it a little bit, to change it. And so the...
How about Spanish? They say Isu.
Well, I don't know Spanish.
Jesse, they call it Jesse.
They call it Jesus.
Yeah, so the first name is not the problem. It's just a custom over the centuries we've developed that custom, not to say that first name, but to change it somewhat. Why? Because Jews have suffered so much by that name over the centuries, and therefore we don't want to say it exactly the way it is. The second name is the problem. The second name, the CHRIST, that's the problem because that indicates that's the name of Elokus. That indicates that he's anointed, and that is the problem.
What's the suffix of MASS? Christ?
Oh, okay. So on the holiday, so the question is whether you can call it the name of the holiday, because the name of the holiday, Christmas, right? The first part is his second name, and the second is a suffix. I don't know exactly what it means. It means gathering. Okay. So can you pronounce that? So there are many people who will not say that word. They'll say kratzmach, right? Kratzmach. They'll change it. Xmas, they change it, right? You see the big X and MAS, and they'll change it because they don't want to refer to him in any way. But others say, other poskim have said that that's okay. Why? Because you're not. It's the name of the holiday. It's blended. It's part of the name of the holiday, rather than referring to him himself. It's also pronounced a little bit differently than you pronounce his name.
Stam,
right?
you don't say it. Jews, stam, they
But
don't say it.
Jews try to avoid.
But you
saying
don't say it. But the problem comes where, the people you work with, they say Merry Christmas. So
Right.
I mean, they expect you to say the same thing back.
Okay.
So that's the problem.
That's another issue. Can you say Merry Christmas to them?
Could say same
Right?
thing to you,
The
same
best.
thing to you.
What?
Same thing to you.
Same to you, or you could say Happy Holidays. Right? Happy Holidays. Right? That's what many people do. Right? Happy Holidays, season's greetings. Something in which you don't have to actually mention.
Mr. Hadin, what's the issue?
What?
Mr. Hadin, what's the issue to say?
Well, if it's the name of Avodah Zarah, so you're not supposed to mention the name of Avodah Zarah.
That's a social greeting. Just
What?
a social greeting. The social
A
greeting.
social Happy Holidays is not a problem. That's
But
not-
that word
Say
also,
Merry Christmas.
But that-
they say,
Right, yeah, because
or is it social greeting?
It's because of the name of Avodah Zarah in it, and also there is a halacha about a social greeting on their holidays. On the holiday itself is more of a problem. On the day itself.
Therefore, even those poskim that are matir to say with the suffix, we could say it, but Mary is.
Yeah, it's
they would be
better.
matir.
It's better to say Happy Holidays or something a generic, a very general,
If that's
thing.
the notion of Avodah Zarah, then even Happy Holiday should be also. If that's the notion of Avodah Zarah, if that's stem cell of Avodah Zarah inside, if there's anything Avodah Zarah inside,
Yeah, but you're
any
not-
indication is also happy. What do you mean happy? No, you can't be happy.
Huh?
Can't be happy.
I don't
The
think
man
that-
shot.
You're
If it
not.
is not, it's not. If it is, everything should be also.
Yeah, but it's so one should avoid trying to say that. Just- A minhag. It's minhag. It's a minhag to be mad. Now, as far as Santa Monica, Simcha Monica, right? Monica was a saint. They have many. The Christian religion has many saints.
What does saint
They
mean?
call saint means tzaddikim, not gods. They're not. A saint is a holy person, a righteous person. They're not gods. They don't worship the saints. So there really is nothing wrong with saying Santa Monica. Santa Monica. In fact, you heard of Satmar Hasidim? Satmar, you know Satmar? Satmar, Saint Marie. Saint Marie, right? And it became Satmar. But the town in Hungary was really Saint Marie, and there's really nothing wrong. There are some people who don't want to say saint. So Santa means saint, right? So they will avoid saying saint, so they say Simcha Monica. Okay, it's not necessary. It's really not necessary at all, because you're not praising the Avodah Zarah. It's the Monica was a saint, a righteous person in the church, and therefore there's nothing wrong with saying it.
Most of the saints in Europe, they were quote unquote victims of blood like this. That's why they made them saints
Yeah.
in Europe. So like Saint Raphael, Saint Ism, they were like these kids that the Christians would murder for blood like this, and then as a result, they named them saints.
Oh yeah? Yeah, I didn't know that. And there are people that they name saints because they feel that they lived a righteous life. So they give them sainthood, right? But but they're not gods. They're not worship. No one is worshiping them. So there's nothing wrong with saying.
What about the person that comes with dancing and everything is called saint?
of Santa Claus.
Yeah, what's that?
It's a myth. It's a myth. There's nothing there. They make it
Anything
up.
religiously about it, or
But
just?
I don't think there's anything religious about
No,
it. But of course, talking about it and talking and telling Jewish kids to talk about, of course, that's of course, that's something that should not be done at all. To use their culture, the culture of their religion, right, and to talk about it and tell the kids that you're going to get and show them the Santa Claus in the department stores and have them go over and get a bracha from Santa. That's something that absolutely should not be done. Terrible chinuch. Absolutely terrible chinuch. Let me just talk about one more topic, and there's a lot more to talk about, but one more topic, and that is music of Avodah Zarah. Right? This is the season where you turn on the radio, and you hear all kinds of Christmas carols, right? All kinds of songs that they're singing on the radio. What?
The songs are nice.
That's a question. Can you say that? So the halacha is, when it comes to music of Avodah Zarah, right? You're not allowed to listen to music that is being played for the Avodah Zarah, being played as part of their service, as part of their prayers. If they have an organ, right, and they're playing certain music, and because you're getting hanor from music of Avodah Zarah, that's going to be yours. Of course, if you happen to walk by and you hear the music coming, don't stop and concentrate and listen to it. But if you have no intention to listen to it, so that's Dov Sheina Miskave. That's going to be moved.
Well, what they play in the radio, I mean,
What?
jingle bells.
Jingle bells, yeah. So that's not music of Avodah Zarah. That's not music of Avodah Zarah. The music, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva in which he writes, the music that they play in their church, right? Church music, one is not allowed to listen to, even if it's just a recording. It's not actually live now in the church, but it's a recording of church music. There used to be in the Middle Ages what they called Gregorian chant. There was a certain type of music that they used in the church. So if one would listen to a recording of that music, that's also
gospel singing.
What?
They do in the church.
Gospel singing, right? Gospel singing, because that's used for their service, to worship the Avodah Zarah.
The carols would be okay?
The carols. So Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, the carols are not. It's just about the season of the year, right? But it's not actually used in the worship. Right? In the worship of their Avodah Zarah. It's just it's related somehow. So Rav Moshe writes, technically, there's no issa. It's not prohibited to listen to that. However, he says, it's a davar mechur. It's something that we should avoid, because it can have an impact on our neshamas, right? Since it's related, it's affiliated with Avodah Zarah. So a davar mechur means, technically, it's not prohibited, but it's something we should distance ourselves from, because it can have some kind of negative influence. As I mentioned with Acher, Acher became an apikoros because he used to listen to Greek music, right, all the time, and that had an impact. And that's really very, very important. Today, just a little bit on a tangent, there's so much beautiful Jewish music out there, quality Jewish music, and we have to be mechanech our children, right, to listen and to appreciate Jewish music. That they shouldn't listen to the schmutz of the non-Jewish music that's out there today, the rap music, and it definitely had, and everyone says this, it definitely has an impact on a person's soul, on a person's mind, on his heart, on his soul, when you're listening to that music, the music which is so foreign to us.
Well, and for just one person, you cannot justify what the whole Kollel Yisrael.
The what?
Achad for just one person only.
Yeah.
But never have anything like that after that.
Maybe it did. Maybe we know about Achad. The Gemara talks about Achad.
It's an example.
What? Yes, he's an example. Yeah, but it's proven. It's been documented that this can have a negative effect on a person's neshama, spirituality.
He was not listening to just music. He was reading their books.
And he read their books as well. Right. Gemara says he listened to the music and he also read their books. I think the books fell out from under his jacket, and they saw that he was reading the books of Avodah Zarah. So that had an impact. Had an impact as well. I personally, so as far as the Xmas carols, Rav Moshe writes that it's not asur to listen to. You're driving in the car and you turn on the radio and you listen to it. You go into a department store, right, and you hear jingle bells and all of these carols. And it's not asur to listen to, but it's something that a Jew should avoid because it's a davar mechua. It can have an impure effect on his neshama. I personally.
Entering these nail salons.
The what?
Nail salons where they have these statues and incense.
So you have to know. I think that I was told. I've never been in one, but I was
put
told.
things in front of it. They have them.
They have a statue and they have incense.
Yeah, every
They have
day.
incense burning.
They have elephants. Sometimes they have.
Yeah, so they have incense burning. That incense can be a takrovis avodah zarah, that they're bringing it to their avodah zarah, whatever religion it is, Buddhism or some form of Buddhism, Taoism from the Far East, and the statues, they're bringing a sacrifice to the statues. So the odor, the sweet smell of that takrovis, sacrifice to the avodah zarah, you can't have hanor from, you can't have any benefit. So if you're going to smell that, and it's probably a very, very nice smell.
I mean, they don't worship the statue. The statue is just the model, it's a symbol of connection to the.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Are you sure?
They don't say they don't say that this has a power.
I think they do avodah zarah. I mean, Buddhism is avodah zarah. Hinduism is avodah zarah. These are real. Minhag Havoseicha means they're not frum about it. In other words, they're not going to run. They're not going to run right away when they get a good deal to thank their avodah zarah. That's what it doesn't mean it's not avodah zarah. There certainly is avodah zarah in the world today. It's certainly in the Far East, in the Orient, there's much avodah zarah. But even here in America, there's avodah zarah. So I'm not so sure about that. I think you have to check into.
I mean, if you ask them that this statue has power, they technically it doesn't have power.
But it represents. It doesn't have power itself. It represents a certain power. When they bow down to the statues could represent a certain force, a certain power, and they are bringing the sacrifice to the statue, meaning the statue that represents that power. So it's.
They have if they make like an egg that there should be connection between them and the higher authorities. Is that also called observe for them?
I think so.
But they don't live them. They're not.
I think so. Yeah, shitov is when there's even when there's no statue, but they believe their emunah is their belief is that there are three parts to God, right? So that's shitov. But if there's actually a physical form, a statue, an idol that they're worshiping, whether this idol they believe this statue has power, or the statue is connected to some higher power, and through worshiping this idol, right? They're connecting to to that higher power and trying to influence it. So that's also avodah zarah.
It brings good luck.
When Rabbi says there's a machlok between Rema and Rabbi Yehuda about shituf.
Yeah.
Who says Rema says that?
Rema says they're not that Bnei Noach are not mitzvah and shituf. The Rabbi Yehuda and many others hold that they are.
According to Rema, that shituf means that they contribute some type of power to something rather than HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
That's right.
Now, if there's a presentation in a statue, what does it make difference? According to Rema. According to Rema. That present itself to statue. All the statue.
No, but they're not worshiping HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're worshiping other forces. Other forces. No, they're not. They don't believe in our HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in our God.
No.
They have other gods.
Right. If Shituf is mutar for God, means to say that it's not only the only power.
They believe in Hashem and other forces as well.
No, that power could be spiritual, could be physical, could be represented or physicality. Everything is represented in physicality. The physicality doesn't mean that this statue is Avodah Zarah. It means it represents something. I mean, they're not so stupid to know that this is Avodah Zarah.
It gives you a blessing.
Therefore, what Rabbi thinks this is not Machloket, Rema would be model over here that for Ben Novak is also.
I think so.
Why? What's the heter of Rema? What's the heter of Rema?
What's the
heter of Rema? You know, when he says for Ben Novak,
he's talking. The Ramah is talking about Christianity.
Means what? Means
because they believe that there's Hashem, and Hashem has two partners also.
And there's
two other partners.
They have a statue for that.
No, they have.
The statue represents that.
Yeah.
Therefore, Rema is not. No, if the statue gives bracha, right, I'm asking, Rema would say that's Avodah Zarah. But if it represents that power, no, Mali, this Mali, I don't know.
That's what they say.
I don't know enough. The problem is, I'm not the Rambam, right? I don't know enough exactly about their religion. But this is.
We started the Chabura. Masechet Avodah Zarah never makes it.
Doesn't make
at 400 prokim.
That's right. Avraham Avinu's
Let us be busy with Kama or Batra, and let us be busy with those Dinyani.
What were in the 400 prokim? This is for B'nai Noah.
Yes.
For B'nai Noah. So there's a lot of halachis and a lot of different forms of Avodah Zarah that they had to deal with.
Rav Sauer,
Yes.
in India, certainly in Akko, from the London-based Rav, who was in India for cashews,
Yeah.
so he went to the house of the owner of the company, and they want to mechabed him with fruits.
Yeah.
So they had a nice tray full of fruits. So they brought it in front of him. Then one of the people whispered to the girl, "Shh," brought it back to the other one. Then they brought it back to him. What happened? They have the fruits, they were going to put in front of the Avodah Zarah. First, they should bless, then they bring it to the guest.
It's like a takruvis. It's like a sacrifice to the Avodah Zarah. And then they bring it to the guest. So I heard this question from mashkichim.
Right?
Mashkichim who go to Thailand.
I'm talking about this. If I was from other
Right.
places, went to India.
That they serve it to them, but after they bring it to the Avodah Zarah. So that's a question. Is that takrovis Avodah Zarah? That's also Bahanur.
Why is it a question?
What?
Why is it a question they're doing?
Because to be also Bahanur, there's something more might have to be done. And they might have to do an action on it. It's a technical question. But they are serving it to the Avodah Zarah. So it might be takrovis.
As far as the nail salon, is the room usher to go into? There's a cheder of the Zarah, or is it the site?
No, it's not a cheder. It's not designated as for worship. It's just the smell of the incense. Of the incense that and it's a nice smell, and you'll be getting some benefit.
But you don't go to smell.
Right. You don't go. So if you're just going there and you happen to smell, but if you're sitting there, if I don't know how long it takes for the nails, but if you're sitting there for a half hour and they're doing the nails, and then you smell, and it's a nice smell, and then you get enjoyment from it, that could be.
What if you don't? It's enjoyment.
What?
If you don't like the smell, how about that?
If you don't like the smell,
You okay then?
yes, that should be okay. But usually it's a nice. I imagine it's a nice. I don't know. I've never gone in for nails.
What about, let's talk about the Yiddish question. Yiddish question is like this, that. Listen to this question, it's a very interesting question. A businessman in downtown is working, he has some people that they could do business. Now there are some Japanese and Chinese, that they have a statue, they have a crowd or everything. You could go inside and do the business. Now Yiddish question is that it's not hashkafa, not sad halacha. He says that is it better that I should go to these people and relate to them, I get a much better business, or I go to people that don't know Avodah Zarah, they don't have such a statue there. They're respecting the statue, and this, I feel a little bit bad. I give them business, and this is Avodah Zarah. I'm sure that they're appreciating the Avodah Zarah, whatever that they're doing.
You mean, are they going to thank the Avodah Zarah for the business deal?
No, I'm not saying on the halacha basis. Halacha basis, I think that's mutar.
Right.
Now in hashkafa, in other words, like Rabbi says, there was a takana that shouldn't do business with the goyim. Why? Because of shubha. But Chachamim, they realize in Kalu, we cannot go with this cheshbonot. Otherwise, they don't have any business.
Right.
Now in hashkafa base, the person should think, how come I don't want, go somebody says, or he should do business with it.
So I would think, whatever's going to give you a better business deal.
Yes.
As long as it's mutar lahalacha, it's mutar lahalacha, you get a better deal. As you're not violating halacha, so why shouldn't you do it? And if there's no issur, there's no prohibition, so do it and get the best business deal and give the money to the kollel.
No, what Rabbi, one point, I love what Rabbi said, but if Rabbi would let me add something over this, that if he says I don't feel good, I don't want it. But if you tell me that I should do it, I do it. But
if you don't feel good, if you don't feel good, so you shouldn't do it.
Shouldn't. Yes, respect this feeling. That's I want. Very good.
Okay, I just want to wish everyone a hatzlacha.
Reform shoes are this church or not?
You cannot go into reform or conservative shul during their services. It's not a